You should see a page that looks like this: Intro to Version Control, Git, GitLab, and GitHub. And then once everybody's good, we'll continue on. No? Oh, no, are we recording now?
Yeah, we're recording.
Oh, okay. Yep, yep.
I'm going to sign off my computer.
Okay. So first, we're going to go to GitLab, and then we're going to do a search, and we're going to look for Nix Mentors. We're going to click on that. Now, actually, and we're going to scroll down and go to Lab Git. And then scroll down. Is everybody here? Getting a frowny face. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, there it is. All right. Is everybody else there?
Reset password.
Okay, perfect. What?
That's funny.
Okay.
You gonna do it? You even gonna get something here, right?
Yeah.
Oh, darkTower? I had
Yeah.
to reset my password before it let me in. So if
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
messing with their
that's
trouble,
perfectly normal. Yep.
so if people are not doing that step, then they'll have problems.
Good point. Yeah, if you're having trouble with this, go ahead and reset your password. If not, you can always ping Nightfly and say, hey, something happened. Okay. So before we get into that, kind of let me bring some points up with Git. So why are we using Git? Like, why do we care? One, perhaps the most important, but later on, is industry uses this. If you tell your boss, oh, I've been using Git for years, this is how I do it. You show them your repository. This is all the code. I use this constantly. It's great. It makes you much more marketable because you're already using the tools that they're planning on teaching you. And if you already know that, by all means, very impressive. More for the immediate thing is you can't screw up horribly and have to start it back from zero. So I'm a tutor. There is a gentleman in 202, and the original due date, he had to restart his entire program over. We had to talk about Git. You laugh, but oh my gosh, I can't imagine being in his shoes. So that is important. Also, has anybody ever dreaded tarring their files to turn it in? So how easy would it be if you totally royally screw the pooch to type in a command and go back to your last save point and go, let's try this again. This is why we use version control. Now, third reason, certainly not the least reason, is if you get called in front of a teacher for cheating, you have a log of every single item that you added to your entire project. I don't want to undershadow this. If you have a Git commit, and it will timestamp it, and somebody a few days, weeks later does a commit, how are you going to cheat off of them? And more importantly, if you didn't have that history, would that be a problem? Maybe, okay? So you do not want to be like, oh, well, what do you mean? This will actually show the teacher at every step that you committed, what your code was looking like, and the direction of your thoughts, and what exactly was happening. Okay? I don't want to lessen the impact of that. It has saved a few people here in this school from having problems, because if several people concurrently come up with the same answer, and some of this code does have a very specific solution. You're being taught by the same teacher. You're looking at the same code and you're manipulating it in the specific way. Sometimes parallels happen, and you do not want the grace of a teacher to get you out of that situation. Okay? Now, going on to actually version control, there's kind of two main schools of thought. One, here's a thing. And we're going to have 10 people working on that thing at once. Do we have a local copy, 10 different local copies of this thing that each manipulate and then merge later? Git is like this. Okay? The first one we're going to look at is the different one. So we're going to look, everyone's all going to look at this thing, and when we want to make changes, we lock it, and nobody else can make changes. So there are pros and cons to this. The first method, which we're going to lock the object, there are no merge conflicts. It either works or it doesn't. There's no other changes. That is really nice, because we don't have to worry about whether at this section will merge and cause problems with another person, because we're the only one making those changes. With Git, because everybody has their own piece of the puzzle, there is a chance. Well, there's not a chance. It's going to happen. It's going to happen where you're going to run through and write code that is exclusive to yours, and it doesn't work with somebody else's. So this is called a merge conflict, and it's one of the most fun things you could possibly do. And by that I mean sometimes on borderline nightmare. Oh my gosh. Oh, all right. Well, we're not gonna worry about that now. Okay. So first thing we're going to look at is locking the piece. So let's go ahead and get to the command prompt. If you still have your, so I'm going to type through this. We're going to look at the RCS. So the first thing we're going to do is actually make the directory. You should be looking in your GitHub repo. You're making the directory.
I'm in GitLab.
Okay. Do a search.
No.
Explore Git public.
Oh.
And do a search for Nix mentors. Nix, N-I-X. Nope, no space. Mentor. Try mentor Nix. Try all.
Oh, there we are.
All right, do that again. That right there, click on that. Stop typing. Oh, click on that, and then lab-git. Oh, okay, so if you're having problems, go to the Explorer and then type in Nix mentors, Nixmentors.
Mike Chill.
Oh,
No. You're in the right place. Right there. Enter. Right there.
Are we going to do this from the
and then git hyphen.
terminal too? Oh,
Yes, we are going to.
Projects, explore projects, is that right?
Yes. So type right there, Nick's mentors,
I'd like it.
and then click all.
I guess we want to terminal there.
Type it in again.
So we're on the GitLab
Okay, click on that,
it's in the section called Nick's,
and then git hyphen mentor, lab hyphen git.
and then you said
Oh, the next one. There we go.
Don't even say you don't.
Okay, is anybody not on the website that says how to do this? Okay, so first we're going to go through how to do this on the command line system, and then we'll talk about doing this online. One of the things I do want to talk to you about is later on, when you're done with your classes, you're going to graduate, you're going to want a job. Being able to go through every piece of code you've ever written in this class might come in handy, because when somebody comes up and says, I'm thinking of hiring you, give me a sample of code. Would you rather go make stuff right there, and you might have a day or two to come up with something that looks impressive? Or would you like to email back a link and say, hey, here's my repo, take a gander? I suggest looking at blank. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so RCS, we're going to take a look at that. So the very first thing, we're going to make a new directory. So, okay. So we're going to make a directory. We're going to call it the RCS. I'm not going to type it all, but there we go. So now we've got a directory. We're going to go and cd into that directory. And then okay, so does everybody have their RCS folder and they're in it? So this next line that we're looking at, okay, so this next line, what we're looking at is we're going to call on echo. What echo is going to do is going to take what you input and set it as output. So if you actually type echo testing and hit enter in the command prompt, all it will say is echo, or it'll just say testing. What you give it is what it gives you back. And then we're going to redirect that output, because testing is going to be just sent back out. We're then going to take it to the file example.txt. So what we're doing is we're actually creating a file with the word testing in it. This is the same result as if you set vim example.txt and then typed in testing and then save quit. Instead of doing all that, all we're doing is writing a line and redirecting the output to a file. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Now, we're going to actually set this up for version control. So that ci-u example.txt. So what we're doing is we're going to say, hey, RCS, this file, start taking a gander at it. Say that again.
I said CI is an unknown option.
CI is an unknown option?
Yeah, maybe because I didn't do my dash U right.
Yes, you did not. There we go.
I
Yep.
need a dash U rather than just a dash.
Exactly.
My computer should have known that.
It should have. Okay, there we go. Now we're there.
Did I do the same thing?
Well, you did a double dash.
Oh, I didn't type the word the same. Never mind. I need to redo that.
Yeah, you don't have, yeah. There we go. You got it.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work, let me know. You're good. Okay? Has everybody got? And then go ahead and do an LS. Make sure that you actually do have an example.txt. Yeah.
We're making an example text.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So you did the first line up there, echo testing into example.txt.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's cool. So period ends it.
What,
Initial revision.
what software is that using? The CI-U?
Say that again.
CI-U, what is that a command for?
That is RCS.
RCS
So,
is the name of the
so if you actually do a man CI, if you've got more specific questions about this, this is actually really nice for when you're working with live code, because nobody else can touch this, and as soon as you're done, it starts using that from the very beginning. Unfortunately, this doesn't scale very well. Can you imagine 10 people trying to work on the same thing all at once? You can't. Only one person is allowed to work on this. And that's why this is used for very specific stuff. However, you don't have merge conflicts. That's the strong part of this. You know that what the version that you have out there is the version you have out there. There are no other versions. And once we get into Get, you'll see what happens when you have a lot of different versions. Okay? Yeah.
And was it what we mean that made the directory RCS that made it to where this directory has?
No, that was just a variable. That you could have called it anything you wanted.
Okay.
The RCS doesn't mean anything in this context. The thing that made it work was the CI-U,
Okay.
and then you told it, I want you to look at this.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so is everybody at the initial revision 1.1? Okay, so let's go ahead and modify it. So we're going to go, first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the -L. The L means you're locking this. So you're going to go ahead and say, I'm about to make a change. This thing, I own it now. Don't let anyone else touch it. And you're going to get this, revision 1.1 locked, which means nobody else is allowed to touch it. It's under your exclusive access. Okay, is everybody at the locked line right now? Okay, so now you're going to get this output that says you've got the file, it's done, and now this looks very similar to what we did before, but we're going to use echo, and we're going to say, I want you to tell testing again, and those two less than markers is going to say, I want to append to this file. So instead of so if you didn't have 2, it would actually overwrite what was in there with testing again. We're putting 2 there, so it's appending to the line that's already there. Okay. And now we're going to say, hey, what's the difference between the version you have now and what I've done? And so we're going to look. It's going to say the timestamp. Remember that timestamp is going to be crucial. For any of these things, you've got a timestamp of what you were looking at before and after. And it shows, oh, you just added that one line. If it was originally like this and then you just removed it, this would be a minus. Okay? All right, so now we want to tell them, hey, this is what I've done. Whenever you go to a different version, you're going to say an exclamation of what you've done. One of the big things is this is not a past tense thing. You're not going to say, I added something, I changed something. You are in the moment, this changes blank. This does things. This is more of an action current time snap. So use that mentality when you're creating a log. I would highly recommend for every single program that you do in the future, unless it's maybe 10, 20 lines long, to use version control. RCF would be kind of tricky unless you've got 2 or 3 people and you all felt like using it. Git is by far the more industry experience from what I've heard.
RCS is Linux's version, right?
No.
What is RCS? I mean, where's it coming from?
I'm not sure where it comes
I
from.
mean, it's loaded on the computer already, right?
It is loaded on the
Same
computer.
as
That's
the
why
kernel.
you're using it.
Yeah.
We actually use it a lot for programs that are being run all the time. So if we want to make sure that everybody has one version of a thing, this is what we use. Yeah.
I use Git Bash at home. Would
Yeah.
RCS be included in Git Bash or just normal like commits?
I don't know if it's added automatically or not. I know it is rarely lightweight, so it wouldn't surprise me that it is, but it also wouldn't surprise me if it was just part of the regular distro.
Okay.
But yeah, it'd just be a simple install.
That's cool.
Okay. Okay, is everybody got that? All right. Okay, so now you can look at the log. Who did this change? When did they do it? What was their mentality? What was the reason they had for this commit? These are all answers in the log. Okay. Any other questions?
Is that P1 or P? It's P1, right?
Say, what are you talking about? P1?
Example.txt, yeah. P1.
Yeah.
Thought it was L. Yep.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, what version is it? I want to look at 1.1 as the version. That's what you're doing.
Yep.
Okay. So now we're going to go to Git. This is completely different. Or actually, before we leave RCS, is anything more to add for RCS? Okay. So Git is completely the opposite. The thing is never really locked. Anybody can do anything with their own version. Once you have downloaded that version, you can do anything you want. You can run it, you can test it, it is yours. The fact that this thing suddenly turns into something else completely means nothing to you playing around with this object. Just because you're now running program is completely different. So let's say this is production code. It's now completely changed. You're running an old version. This version that you have has no idea that this has happened. This is both good and bad because your local version hasn't changed. Unlike RCS, where that version you're connecting to, it is the version. When you're looking at Git, the version you're looking at might not be yours. It might not be the very first thing. Because as soon as you sync up, this can change a split second later. And now you are behind. So a good example of this is you're going to have master. You're then going to have your version. But then master might change. So let's say that's version 2. But you're looking at version 1. You then make your changes. Somebody else then makes their changes. What are the chances of a problem between your version and somebody else's version happening? This is why you lock the files in RCS. But you can have as many people making different changes. So usually you have a guy in the middle that supervises it. So yeah,
How are these masters updated? Is it like a consensus thing?
there's a guy in charge. So
the guy that
yeah.
says that's the master, keep moving. You know?
Yeah, so you'll actually do a push request to this person. So just to give you an idea of kind of how we're going to do it in the cat, has anybody worked with Puppet yet? Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to make your own personal Puppet repo. And it is controlled by Git. And you're going to go to the file. So something very popular that you start out with is the USNs. So it's the security patches that we employ for Linux. So we need to make sure that those patches get populated to all these computers. So what we'll do is go into the folder that Puppet looks for the newest versions of the patches. So you need to modify that file. That file, however, could effectively cause problems for hundreds of computers. All of the computers you see around you in MCAX could be affected by a misspelling. So we don't do that. Instead, we do our branch, we run a set of tests, and then you send it to probably a Droog or a Claw. That Droog or Claw is then going to take your script and run it on a box with that environment because it's everything that was there, nothing's changed, and we're going to make sure that that box works fine. And then that person you talk to is going to say, hey, Nightfly, or there's like a couple other people, but usually it's going to be Nightfly, and say, can you go ahead and push this to branch to master? And he's going to be, yeah, sure. He's going to make sure that was tested. He's going to do a final check to make sure everything seems okay. And then he'll merge it with master. And once it's merged with master, all of these computers are then going to see that code and update themselves. Okay? No. Thanks. So that is the power and the workflow of kind of what we're going for. So until this merges back with master, though, you're going to have, yours is not going to reflect this, and that one's not going to reflect this. Okay? Does anybody not understand, is confused, needs some clarification? Yeah?
Does the middleman have a fancy name?
Usually it's like, I usually like calling him a merge master. That's what I like calling him, but you know, I don't think it's a technical term for that. Okay. So before we actually get into that, what I would recommend is doing the global setup stuff. So when you're at your home directory, you're going to type this git config. So you're going to say, hey git, I want you to do this stuff. You're going to give it your name and your email address. If you don't do this, it fills in the blanks for itself and it doesn't understand kind of how we're doing things. But this is a good habit.
It doesn't matter what directory you're in. It just. Actually, it doesn't matter what directory.
I would just do it from your home directory.
Home directory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put it in our cat email, right? Or is that, are we doing?
I don't really care. Whatever you want to put in there. Yeah. Whatever email you want for the project you're working on, for them to email you on. So if it's CAD stuff, put your CAD email. If it's school stuff, put your school email. So if you're logged in as a student, put your student email address. If you're logged in as a CAT, put your CAT email address. Okay, and then the git config global core.editor vim, that's actually kind of important. A lot of people will use things other than Vim, and if you don't, and it will, the code you're mucking with will occasionally say, hey, I want you to use this text editor. You're overriding that, and there's been a couple of times where I haven't run into problems because I explicitly told it I did not want to use Nano, or I did not want to use Emacs. I don't really know how to use either one of them, but I didn't run into problems because I told it, I'm not paying attention to what you're telling me. We're going to just open you up in Vim. We got this. All right. Okay. This is kind of nice. The color scheme allows you to see what is executable, see what is a folder, and see what is just plain text. Okay. Okay. Now, this is another thing that's really important. The man pages for get. You do not just type man and then the command you're trying to do. You need to preface every command with a get hyphen. Do not put spaces in that. So if you're needing help with a command, that's definitely important. Okay, so you're just handed an assignment. I need you to do blank. What's the first thing you do? Make a folder. So you're going to make a folder, cd into that folder, and then you're going to type get init. Let me know as soon as you're done with that. What?
Nothing. You threw me a curveball when you took it off the screen.
Oh, sorry. Here.
No, that works.
Let me.
No, I got it.
Okay.
I got dual screen action here.
Okay, gotcha. And then we're going to.
High tech.
Okay. So the very first thing you're going to do, make a folder. You're going to do this, and then you type get init. Your command prompt should have changed to look kind of like mine. Notice how it now says you're on the master branch, and then there is a pound sign after it. Does anybody not have that?
Yeah, that's cool.
You don't have that?
You gotta go get status.
Yeah, get status is on my mouse, but not the prompt. Isn't that a?
Here it is, right?
Okay.
Check your status.
Huh.
Initially empty.
I don't.
That's it. It's the same screen here.
Oh, why it's not working for you. Okay, so if you want to fix that, you are going to need to go and modify your.
Oh, it is in bachelor
Your bash RC. We can talk about that later. If yours doesn't have that, it's some line of codes. And I can actually give you a file that has some changes that'll have it a part of it. Yeah.
What is that prompt doing? Is that naming the master branch?
No, so you initialized everything and you just start automatically on a branch called master.
Okay.
Depending on where you work, it's usually called master. You'll also see origin occasionally. You'll also sometimes have several levels that are all at the various stages. Master, production, there's also maybe testing, experimental. It's going to depend on where you're going. For when you're starting out and you're making this personal for you, you don't really have to worry about branching. So when you're very first starting, so let's say you're taking 162. You're given an assignment. So you make your assignment, let's say you're working on project 3. So you make a new project called project 3, and then you type get init. The only way you can mess up is not saving it enough, and we're about to go through how to save those. It's going to be a commit message, and that'll let you get through all of that. As long as you can remember get init, get add, and get commit, you have saved yourself a lot of time. You might not know any other commands, but if you ask any of the cats that are hanging out in Texas at the time, say, hey, blank went wrong, I need help. I have Git. They can do magic to get you through your troubles, because they can revert to an old version. They can look at a difference between your current version and the last time it worked. And it's rather trivial to do this stuff. Or imagine this. You go and talk to one of the people who can do backups, so a claw or above, and say, I lost my file, or I'd like an old version. That's a much different conversation than anyone can help you. They just need to know the magic formula, to I now need one of, I think it's 5 people that can help you. And they do kind of have better things to do than try to find an old version of a file that you should have not needed in the first place. Okay? Okay, here, let me go ahead and put this up for you again. So then yeah.
When you were saying the bash RC thing, you were talking about that master. Is that what you were talking about?
Say that again.
You said something about we needed to change bash RC at some point for some issue.
Your .bash RC. If you don't have master with that pound sign after it, come see me afterwards. We'll get you squared away. It only takes a few minutes. I would also recommend. I have a Linux class that's on video. Go look at that. And we go through quite a bit on the bash RC, the vim RC, and how to navigate, how to create aliases, stuff like that. Okay? Okay. Okay, so one of the first things to do is if you're worried about what's going on, you can always go to get status. What that does is it tells you what's going on. We haven't done anything, so it says you haven't done anything. That will quickly change. So now we've got the echo, we've got a statement, and then we've got a place to store it. Okay? Okay, so right now we have a file folder. If you're If the power went out, if something happened to your local version, it would be gone. So it's untracked. Sometimes we do want this. So examples of it would be, we'll talk more about it in a .getignore, but like a.out. You don't really care about a.out. You care more about the code than what it's doing. You can always compile it later. So do you really want your a.out version controlled? Usually not. Same thing with your SWO files and your swap files. Okay? Those remnants of if Vim gets closed unexpectedly. Okay? So what you need to do is tell Git, hey, I want you to start tracking specific files, like your main program, your .h's, your .cpp. Those you need to have Vim track. And then once they're committed, they'll give you a hash of it, and that's how you explicitly tell what snapshot of it you're going to be going with. Okay? So you're going to specifically tell Git, hey, I want you to add this file. And then notice how nothing's changed. You still haven't committed anything, so nothing's changed. However, it is now tracking it. It says, oh, you are going to be interested in this file. And then we commit. That is the command that Git will use to say, this is the precise instant in time that I'm going to keep this. This is now under the version, never to be lost. We've got this. It will then go and dump you into Vim and give you a commit message. Give something description. So this implementation is working. This is broken. I need to do blank. More information is generally better. Yeah.
Is there a good rule of thumb of one to commit versus like one to push?
So right now, you're just going to commit. You don't really need to push.
But like just in general, like making commits.
Usually at the end of the day, I'll do a push. I do a commit after anything major has been changed, or if something has been tricky. A good example is if you implement an entire function, go ahead and do a commit. Now, let's say your program's different. You come back the next day and you spend an hour debugging. It's one line. You've only changed one line. Are you going to commit? Yeah, it took an hour to debug that stupid thing. So it's up to you. You can never commit too often. I have never had the problem of committing too often. However, if you forget to commit in one day and then go, oh, I have 1,000 lines of code I added. Well, that's not fun. But at least you got it to the end and committed. So it's going to depend on what you're comfortable with. Like, if you're typing in a text document, how much do you feel like typing until a power outage will ruin your day?
Oh, yeah.
You're rolling the dice any second.
Yeah, I'm old school. I just save it in different names. I save my own version control permanently on my computer.
Use Git.
It's not good. It's not good. What else sees it? I'm describing your master. It's beautiful. I love it. But all versions that I have, V1, V2, just roll down.
Yeah.
Because of that power will
Yep.
ruin your day, you're screwed.
Yeah. So it's kind of that mentality is they have a better recovery system if you have an entire power outage. However, do you want to trust that? Okay. Any other questions?
And it's on the cloud too, so it's even better. So you don't have to.
Not at this stage, but we're going to get there.
So we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. So this is pure local. Okay? Yeah.
And also, this is not public, right? It's just.
We are not there yet. Right now, we're manipulating your piece. Your tiny piece, that's your local piece. We have not gotten to this big chunk yet. So if your hard drive fails, this has not saved you yet. However, What does come in handy is you do this on your school server. I mean, there's a very good argument. Does it matter? We do backups a lot. I would be very, very surprised that a system outage of such ramifications would make it so you couldn't use your file anymore. We have a lot of backups. We have a lot of redundancy. I feel pretty confident that I can just save it in my local repository and not have to push it out. But we are going to get to that point. Don't worry. Okay? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So now go ahead and do your git status, and you'll actually see different pieces of information. So if you do a git log, you should, status isn't going to be quite so interesting, but if you do a git log, you're going to see a hash of everything that you committed, who it was by, their email address, the date and time, and that message that you saved. Okay? So you can edit the file, you can look at the status, and then do an add, and then do a commit, and then if you want to see what happens at the status between those, you can definitely add it. There's also a shortcut. Git commit everything that you're tracking. You can also add a -m and then in quotes the message that you would type in Vim. So you could do it all in one line, all in one insert, and not get jumped around.
So if you don't do the -a, you have to do it one at a time, like one file or two?
It depends how you do it. You can regex everything. You can also do an add dot. That's kind of popular. It just depends on kind of what you want. I would recommend not doing it until you're comfortable with it, though. Okay, so now remember, yeah.
Sorry, so this commit A just does everything that was just talked about?
So git A will do the git add function, the add. So everything you're tracking now, it says, I want you to do that already. So we've already put in that example.txt. So it already knows you're tracking that file. So the next step would be, well, now that I've already tracked it, I now need to do a commit. The -m will do the commit message also. Okay, so now, so let's go ahead and look at the git diff. This can count invaluable. One of these days, there's a class. It's called CS333. This might come in handy. Okay? Let's just say there has been more than one time where a person has gone to tears because their code does not compile. How often in Vim do little artifacts come up? Like an I or a :V. These are just a few examples that will destroy your life in that class. Do a git diff, and these things now come highlighted in red. Let's just say it comes in handy. That's why you can't commit too often. If it was working at one point and it's not working now, those changes will be there. Okay? I personally had a problem with my program, and it was because I was writing in Python, and if you've heard about it, the shebang at the top tells you what environment it is. All of a sudden, it stopped working. I went through my code with a hair tooth pin and wondering why it wouldn't work. I did a diff, and it was because I had deleted the pound symbol in the shebang. That was fun. I probably should have done that before, but I was sure it was something that I had just played with. But okay, neither here nor there. Okay, so now we're going to look into removing a file. You no longer want to track it. So let's say there's a text document that you're playing around with. It's no longer useful. It was a sketch pad. Maybe it was a test program to prove a concept to yourself. You no longer need to worry about it. Get rm, the file name, it's no longer a tracked file. But it will stay around. And then you can also rename them by using the move. Same thing as a Linux file. You just have to preface it with git.
So this doesn't like delete the file, it just makes it to where Git no longer is following?
RM will no longer track it, but it doesn't remove the file. It is not the same as without the git. Do not make those two mistakes. However, if you have to do a git rm new file, it is very trivial to just get the file back. So don't worry about that. Okay? Now, that is mostly for you personally. So now you're working with others. Okay? So since each person has their own version, what you can do is self-identify that I no longer have the master branch. So you're going to have your own. When you're doing stuff for the cat, usually it's your username, underscore, and then what you're doing. So like when I do it, I do tower T underscore USN updates, the NVIDIA driver update, stuff like that. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay, so you're going to make a new branch. Once you create the new branch, you're going to go ahead and step on it. This is where that command line stuff can come in handy. Also, when you were going through it, did you notice how the pound sign changed after your first add to a star, and then after your commit, it went away completely? It lets you know what is happening with your files. Okay? So go ahead and switch to your other branch. Instead of kind of doing it all that way, this becomes pretty automatic. Git checkout -b and then the branch name. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and make a new one, a new file, and then do a commit. Go ahead and look at the log on what's going on. Okay, so this is kind of what's happening. You've got a master branch, and then you have changed it, and you now have your own test branch. So switch back and forth and check your logs, and then you can see what's going on. Okay, does anybody have any questions so far? We're about to enter kind of a tricky bit, so I want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Yeah. What's going on?
I don't know what this page is or what.
So that's the commit message. So just go up one.
Okay.
and then type what you want your commit message to be. Oh, go into insert mode. There you go. Perfect. And then go ahead and exit. Escape, and then colon WQ. Perfect. There. Now you've got your commit. Okay? Okay, am I going kind of fast? We can slow it down. Okay. So this I would recommend. You know how to get to this repository. You know how to initialize a Git repo. I would definitely go over this a couple of times. If this is not something very simple, and this is one of those things that in an actual environment could be very handy when working with more than one person. Okay? So very carefully go through here. We're going to make a new branch. We're going to create a thing. We're going to add it and then do a commit. We're then going to go to master, make something different, and then we're going to merge the two together. So we have created a conflict. One file says derp, the other one is non-derp. They both cannot coincide on the same document. Either one has to win or the other. Okay? So this is where that merge conflict comes up.
No, I'm done.
Uh-oh. Okay. So you're going to get an error, and then you're going to say, hey, this is the problem. So if you run git status, you'll get this message in Vim. Okay?
Can you scroll back up one?
Yeah.
Back up to, I'm at derp.
The derp part.
Yeah, I'm
Derp,
at
derp.
perfect.
All right, there we go. Okay.
So
Yeah.
this creates new branches under master, even if you're, so if I'm in testing and I create a new branch, it's not going to create a new testing.
No, you're creating it under master. So you go to master and you say, I'm making a new branch. It's going to take everything that master is and pull it down to a separate branch, and we're now going to call it testing. Any change you do to testing does not affect master by design. So you can totally ruin what you're doing and not have a care in the world. And that's the beauty of it. Mm-hmm.
So can you branch off of testing into like testing?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So so what you're going to see in industry is you're going to see a master, and then you're going to see a bunch of different versions. And then at this version level, you're going to have other different commits. So let's say this is testing, this is the experimental one. And then these might get pushed over to master, but then something happens. We can always roll back to this version that we know works, and then pick and choose what happens. But in an emergency, we can go back to this latest stable release. Okay? Okay. Has everybody gotten the merge problem? Okay. So what you're going to do is if you run git status, it'll tell you what the problem is, and then open that file up in Vim. It's going to look like this. Even though you didn't actually add this stuff, this is added for you by Git. So what you're going to do is take everything away except for what you don't want. So you're going to remove this, you're going to remove this. If you want to keep non-derp, you're going to remove that and that. And then you're going to save it. And then,
You remove everything?
not the line you want to keep.
So we'll remove non-derp.
So you want to remove head, you want to remove the equals, you want to remove the derp, and you want to remove the new branch. So what you're doing, yeah?
Excuse me, which file is this one? Show the head, no.
So head is a marker that Git gives you. So imagine this was in 1,000 lines of code. You can actually do a search for head or those greater than or less thans, and it will go directly to that part of the code.
Like it should open it in your editor, like open which
Yeah.
one, which one, open.
This will actually be added in Vim. It's actually a part of that file you're tracking now. Yeah.
Sorry, what's the name of the file? To see it.
Example.txt if you've been following it.
Where is it, derp?
It's derp, yeah.
Derp file. Just Vim derp file works. I just typed derp file. DRP.
Do an ls.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah, call it derp file.
Derp file.
Oh no, do a status.
Okay.
Git status. Okay, Vim derp.
Oh, you know what,
Okay.
I just created the file and opened
Oh, okay, all right
I
then.
messed everything up and I just did that.
Okay, yeah, if you delete everything and create the,
Other line non-separators.
yeah, so you're going to remove these separators. So Vim's keeping an eye on what's going on here. So if you remove all of this stuff and you destroy that conflict, that's what's going to commit. So when you actually go to commit, you will actually be able to merge seamlessly and everything is happy and peaceful and you will smile and laugh and have a great day.
In between when you did your first try to commit and you fixed your things.
Yes.
Dave committed in the middle.
Look, life's not perfect, all right?
Sorry.
And just rain on your parade. But yes, that does happen. So imagine there's 20, 30, you haven't merged in a while. So it takes you quite a while.
Remove head.
And so it can be a while until you're up and running. But eventually you make it. Yeah.
So if that's just the two things that were entered by different people.
Yeah, so that is the code that's conflicting. These are mutually exclusive lines of codes. Non-derp and derp, they're on the same line doing the exact same thing. What do we do?
And so to edit that, we just edit it in Vim and write, can we do that in Vim? And then
Yeah, you'll just open this up in Vim, and you'll delete this head part, this new branch part, the equals, and then delete whatever you don't want. You might also change some line here or something. Like it's going to depend on what the factors are that's causing this commit.
So if you just want to keep non-derp, you delete everything else except for the line non-derp.
Exactly. And then there's no longer a conflict because you've decided what is going to go and what's going to leave.
or if you wanted to keep the new branch, you just delete head and everything up.
Yeah, so a good example of this is when I was writing Zulbot. We changed some of the files that it was counting on using. So we ran into a merge conflict where it was trying to say, do you want the new version or the old version? They're mutually exclusive. And so I accidentally told it, no, I want the old version. And so that was fun. And then, but I was able to go into my repo and say, what's the difference between now and then? Oh, I did this on accident. So we could actually go and change it very easily to always use the new version instead. Did a new commit, and now it's fine. Your snacks are safe. Yes, Scooby snacks. Okay, is everybody okay? You want me to keep going, or are you still working? Okay. I'm gonna keep going then. Okay, so rebasing is another thing that's kind of tricky. When you make a commit and you want to change some stuff, this is where we're going to go. So usually when you rebase, you're going to use -i for interactive mode, and then you're going to tell it what you want to do. So first thing we want to do is we're going to try to reword a commit that was a few commits ago. So we're going to enter this command, get rebase -i head tilde3.
That's a tilde?
That is a tilde.
Yeah, that's what
So what that tilde is says, from head, I want you to go from head to 3 commits before head. So head is what Git uses to say your current working branch. Okay. You're going to open it up in Vim. You're going to see pick. Replace it with reword. Save and quit. Do a get log. You'll see that that new message has been saved. Yeah.
Mine is still having trouble committing.
What's the message saying?
Same fatal exiting because of unresolved conflict. So when I went into derp file and I took out.
Oh, no, so you need to delete those and just put the message you wanted. Not,
Okay.
not that, yeah. Oh, okay, so you would just take that and just leave the new branch?
Leave new branch?
Yeah.
Okay.
You still need to take all these out. Well, I mean, you can leave them if you want, but those are just markers that were injected in there.
All right.
But now you should be able to commit. Go ahead and try opening it up again. Yeah, just put that on the first line. That should work.
None of the.
4DD. Well, up at the very top. Don't do it yet. 4DD. There you go.
Oh, all right.
And then right click. And try doing it now. Oh.
So
Do a git status. Oh, okay. So that's the problem. Is it saying weird? So you haven't actually do a git add. You haven't actually added this to track.
Oh, all right. And then yeah.
Derp file. Yep. Now try to do a commit. There you go.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Was everybody able to see their yeah.
I did find that file in here,
Okay.
but now I did commit and then it says I can't, I
Committing is
changed it,
not
I edited
possible
it.
because you have-
So it says the merge file or anything. Where's the merge track?
Okay, do a git status. Okay, so you're not tracking derp. That's the problem. So just do Do a git add dirt. Okay, and then and now do a merge, and it should give you a merge conflict.
How do I do a merge again?
Git add merge. Oh, I'm sorry. Git merge and then the branch name.
Dirt?
You can actually just type git derp or git branch. I'm sorry, git branch. Yep, and then enter. Okay, so git merge new branch.
And then that adds it to master.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now git status. Okay, so vim derp file. Okay, so this is the problem where we're having is either one or the other. So do you want derp or do you want new branch? Okay, now right quit. Now do the merge. Yep. That's all right. Do a git status again. Vim derp file. And then right quit. Huh.
Maybe there's another file in there?
Well, no, it would be
Doesn't matter.
mentioned here. Oh, do a git add derp file. And then do git merge.
You mean
Merge
type
new
it.
branch. Yep.
merge
New branch.
new?
Nope, you need a space there.
Oh,
There we go.
new branch.
Oh, okay, and go ahead and do a commit now. Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, so another thing you can do is swap the order of the commits, kind of the same thing. So if you've got several different versions, so when we were talking about testing and experimental and say some patching got involved, you've got a ton of commits. At the end of the day, you just want to know what all goes into version 2. So you can squash those all into one. So what you can do is go into there, do rebase, and clean up all of those extra messages and commits. Because you don't really care that you went through X, Y, and Z to get from A to B. I wouldn't really worry about it though. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. These do become pretty invaluable. Git fetch will make sure that your stuff is working lockstep with master. Okay? And then origin is going to be the remote depot that we're working with. We're gonna talk more about that from the website. Okay? Am I way ahead of people?
One
Yeah.
thing that I'm running into when I try to do like scenario 2, it
Yeah.
says that there's already a rebase merge directory, but I thought that I already.
Did you?
I went
no.
through like the steps that were right here for scenario 1.
What's it saying?
So I just tried to do get rebase again to.
Did you finish the commit?
That's what I had done commit already.
Yeah,
Nothing to commit, working tree clean. I'm on master still.
It says there's an interactive rebase in progress.
So I thought that I edited the commit that came up, changed it,
Can
saved
you-
and quit again.
Can you type jobs? No. I'm not sure. I would have to kind of do some twisty stuff around.
Okay.
Um,
Because I just followed the steps that were right here. Like I changed the file, edited the commit, like the description,
okay.
saved and quit. Because it popped up, like I changed it to reword, the saved and exited, the thing popped up,
Okay.
changed the commit.
And the same things happen to you?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not too worried about it now. I've never had to do this. So don't worry about it. If you still get questions, come to me and we'll work through it together.
So should I do like the abort thing or continue?
You can try it.
Because
Yeah.
continue is an option.
Oh, okay. Try rebase hyphen continue. That seems to be working.
So now that I'm there,
Doesn't that just skip all those commands though?
Yeah. But it gets him out of that weird thing he was in.
Always got a lot, try to
Okay. Now this amend thing does come in handy. So let's say you're working in Puppet and you put a space in the wrong place. Instead of doing an entirely new commit message, you do git commit space hyphen amend. That will just go ahead and fix that few changes and not give an entirely new commit message. You're just going to get a new hash. You're going to you can change the message if you want, but at the end of the day, you're just saving a line of commit messages, so it's not showing up as a new log entry. Okay. You doing okay? Okay. I just see you buzzing. Okay. Okay. So to undo changes, we can check it out. And then make your changes. So the get reset head bad file, we'll take it away. This is especially useful for like swap files. If you get in the habit of using git add dot and you haven't modified your .git ignore, those will start becoming tracked. We don't really care about swap files. So you can go ahead and just stop tracking them. Okay. I've never had to do scenario 2, but scenario 3 has happened more than once, where a program was working and all of the debugging that I ran through did not successfully figure out what was wrong. So if you do a hard reset, you are undoing everything you did. Okay? This is one of those last case scenario things. You have said, I do not care about everything that I've done since whatever commit before this. And you're just letting it go. Okay? You can also change that to a specific hash and that will take you to that last version of a hash. Okay? And then be careful about what you're talking about, because you can break somebody else's code if they try to base their code off of your code. So that nested stuff, it can cause problems. I have not run into this problem yet, but that comes in interesting. Git blame is kind of an interesting thing. There's a line of code and you want to know where it comes from, and there's a lot of people working on it. You can type git blame, it'll have your code and the person who added that line. One of the questions in the testing class I'm in was, what do you do if you see a line of code not doing what you're supposed to? The answer, git blame, was laughed at. But that's also kind of on the serious side. What were you thinking? It was you. I see it. It's provable.
Actually use not that word, but something equivalent.
Yeah, exactly.
To that word.
Exactly. Another powerful thing is to use grep. Git has its own version of grep. Make sure you remember that. Most of the stuff that you're running around in Linux, Git has its own version. Okay? The git stash and the git stash pop is also really nice. So if you just want to check and see if something real quick is working or not, you do a git stash and say, do my changes make sense? If they don't, git stash pop, you're done. Okay? Okay, so before we get into that, the .git ignore. So if you do a ls-a, you will see a couple of files. One is the .git. This is the magic file that makes what the folder you initted a Git repo. If you delete that file, it is no longer a Git repo. All of your changes are now gone. What you see is what you get. It is now a regular directory in the eyes of Linux. Okay? So you're done with the class and you no longer care about version control. What the version you have is the only one you care about. You can delete that file and it's now a bunch of regular files in a directory. Okay? Another thing you can add is called a git ignore. It's dot git and then ignore, and then you're going to put the list of items that you have in there. Some of the ones that's very common is going to be star.swap. You could also do a star.swo, a.out, all these little artifacts that come in there. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Now, here at the CAT, you've got your own GitLab. I would also recommend getting your own student version of either Git, GitLab, whatever version you want. You can easily make these yours. I highly recommend doing this as soon as possible and making all of your code up on the Git repo. On the website, we are going to touch on also making your stuff private to public. If there is a doubt in your mind whether you should have it public or private, make it private. It's much safer for you if you find something that should not have been Actually, before I continue on that, the git ignore. Put your config file in this .git ignore. Config files usually have your passwords, your API keys, your SSH keys, stuff like that. Put those files in your .gitignore. I can't stress that enough. Especially at the cat, you're doing stuff with bots. They need a way to talk to the chat room. Those API keys are not to be released to anyone at all. If they also do a login and name, those need to be in a config file and in your .ignore file. I can't stress that enough. Yeah?
.ignore in your home directory or?
Wherever your git init was done, you're going to have a .git file. You're just going to create a .gitignore. Yeah, I meant to touch on this. I can't stress enough. Those passwords give you elevated rights to most places. Those cannot be just distributed willy-nilly. You want to look something scary, look up how fast API keys get scraped off of a GitHub repo. The average is roughly 12 seconds last time I checked. It is scary. This stuff is just out there. Don't be a part of getting caught up in that, okay? If the only things you can remember is init, add, commit, and watch out for the gitignore, this was a successful class, okay? But once you get into the industry, always make that thought. Is my config file being tracked? Before you do a push, make sure that config file is yours. A big thing about it was somebody's API keys. There's a big drone company called DJI. He was in China. He has been sentenced to prison because he left his API keys in a push call to a public Git repo. I can't imagine how much fun that is for him. That is kind of an extreme case because he's in China and he's now in jail. But it's not a good habit to go, oh my gosh, I am now panicking because my passwords are online and I don't know where I need to go to all these places to change them. Just make sure they're not out there to begin with and you'll be fine. All right. Okay, so going back to friendlier places. Your Git repo. So we saw going on there, you've got your projects. Where is? All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and talk about Zulbot for a bit because that's what I know about. So we can see some of the master's branches that have been pushed to this repo. Worm's done a couple of things, I've done a couple of things, and then robots only was actually me under Zulbot's login. Okay, so we can actually go to each one of these versions and say what piece were they looking at when they pushed their stuff. And then eventually it got merged with master, which is what we're looking at now, which should be production code. Okay?
I'm seeing Zulbot rocking.
Yes?
Let's see as you see it there. I'm seeing Zulbot. I'm seeing your code.
Master. Click on that.
Where? Right there?
Yeah,
oh,
click on that.
didn't even see
Yeah,
it.
now you're
Now
seeing
I'm
that.
it, now
Yep.
I'm just reading it wrong.
Okay.
Because I've seen y'all, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Hey, somebody started 19 hours ago.
We actually are still looking at this stuff. So we can, these are some of the commit stuff. So later on, it would have some problems. and we would try to make it fixed as much as possible. Okay? So this is kind of what a workflow is going to look like. All of us come together, we have our own version, and then we push it up to the website, and then somebody will go ahead and make sure that, yes, this does work, this does make sense, this is going to definitely go ahead and work. And we have no open issues right now. So this is one of the things that Worm wanted to add. I don't know if you know, but you can actually buy more than one object now. This was actually headed up by Worm. He's like, I want this feature. So we wrote some code, and initially it had some snaffles. So we massaged it, made it work, transformed it into usable code, and then we pushed it up. And now you can buy multiple things all at once. Okay? So if there are things you want added to Zulbot or another bot, you can create a merge request, put some code up. We're going to want to at least see what's going on, what exactly your thought process is, how you're envisioning this to be implemented. And you can go ahead and say, hey, I want you to do this. Okay? And then here is some stuff. So I had some problems. I couldn't get around to it all at once, but I said, hey, I need these fixed. Some dead code was there, so we went ahead and removed that. And there was some other stuff. These were actually things that happened. Used to be Zool was actually monitoring hack, I want to say, and it started spamming hack because people didn't know what channel they were in. So that was definitely something we needed to bring to attention to say, you do not need to be in hack. So we pulled it out, and then we solved that. Okay, but that's a specific example where it was doing stuff that didn't need to be done, had a request sent in, and once we resolved that issue, we closed the situation. Okay? Is everybody kind of having an idea of the workflow of what's going on? Okay. Now, let's see here. You can also create milestones. So when you're working with a project, I would recommend going to milestones and saying, here's your algorithm. At what level are we going to be done? Do we have stretch goals? What are the milestones we need to get to our final goal? This is where you put them, and it's also much clearer when you have your set date and time, when you're actually planning this out so you don't get far behind. This might just happen to me, but has anybody noticed that towards the due date they get busy? This can help with not making that a thing. So if you know that in a week I need this list of items done, it keeps you on track. So that way you're not up all night trying to get that last little bit to work. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so when you first get here, you're going to want to make a new project. You're going to name it something. I usually like putting the class what it's for. Perhaps if you're doing this for a cat thing, you can put the project that it's for. It doesn't hurt to be a bit descriptive, but you don't also want a run-on sentence right there. You're then going to have a project URL. This will allow people, if you so choose, to link to your Git and to either add, look, download, something like that. It's going to be specific to what you're looking at. Okay? And then you can be a little more formal in your project description. What's also very handy is to make a README. So how do you use this program? What does it do? How is it useful? That's where that's where you can put this. Now, here is perhaps the most important stuff. Your CS333 repo does not belong in public. I don't care how proud of it you are. Your Carla assignments, probably private's your best bet. Until you're actively looking for a job, I wouldn't release those for anything. Especially not during the class you're currently taking. I do not want to see a Git repo for a current assignment for Carla, because that would be bad. I have yet to see what would happen in that situation, but don't be the person to show us what it's like. All right. Is that kind of self-explanatory? What's going on here? Okay. And then you're going to do a create project. Yeah.
So I might be just like 30 seconds behind our conversation, but what was the project slug?
What do you mean?
When I'm on mine and I'm making a blank project, it says project slug.
Next to project URL.
Slug is the URL.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just like.
So kind of the next step from there is it's going to say, where do you want your initial files from? You can simply type. I don't usually recommend just typing code into a text document. It'd be like writing C++ in a text editor. There are better ways, but you can. You can actually go in and just modify if it's just a few lines, and just modify it right there in the text editor. You're going to also see a button that says clone. So I want to get it from a specific place. You can actually type in the URL. That's how you're going to link your GitHub local thing on your school computer or your laptop to this repository. That's where, when you set that up, it's going to be a get push the URL, and then it's going to ask for your login name and your password. That pushes your local piece up to the master branch that anybody can access. And I can't imagine what would happen for your local hard drive to fail, your local backups to fail, and then their servers failing. Your code is pretty safe at that point. Okay? But that's how that all works. Okay. Did anybody have any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay. Okay, that's kind of all I've got. Does anybody want to work on anything else? Catch up on anything?
I did have
Yeah.
a question. So SSH key, or not SSH, RSA keys,
Okay.
what do they help with when you have a key set for like GitHub?
So you might as well call it like an SSH key. It's access to a certain level of privilege that you're looking at.
Having the key on your computer allows you to push without like.
Yeah. You can add SSH keys to there, and it is one of the easiest ways, because then you never need to use your login and password to push anymore.
Gotcha. It just allows you to push without.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you show an example of just moving a file from there to here? Like
From.
just moving it.
Okay.
Finish something and you want to just save it in your repository for an employer to see later. Like,
Okay.
how do you do that when you're done with it?
So what the basic. Let me see here. So what the basic format is, I don't have one off the top of my head, but it's going to say, what you're going to type in is going to be git push, and then you're going to say something about the URL that you're looking for. So it's going to say, from my current master branch, I'm going to push HTTP something So if you saw origin, you could, that's actually can take the place as a remote branch. So if you type get, actually this would be a good thing, is get what is that? So if you type get remote, oh, I don't have one. Okay. Okay. So what you can do is tell get the short version you want for that URL. So you don't have to type that whole thing again. So it's very common to say get remote and then you would set it. And once you've set it, it will always push to that repository. Because you do only want one master branch that everybody is going to pull from. So you're going to set a get push, and then you're going to see on the other side the merge request. So I'm not really set up to do a full push and pull right now. I'm sorry.
You just have to do get push, and it pushes if you are like in control of that.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. Yeah, yeah. It's
Is it the same
if you have problems with it, come see me. Come see anybody. It's not that tricky. You just have to. You can do the remote branch to set up the URL. If you don't, you can always just do a push with the URL, and then it's going to prompt you for the login name, and then it'll push. If you have a class that uses get and you do not push, you have not pushed your local changes to master. In effect, you are not turning in your homework. Keep that in mind when if a teacher is using get. Professor Wright is really big on using get. I actually really like his method because he forces you to turn everything in using get. Okay.
Is there a way to create the repository itself through the command line, or do you have to create it first?
I'm sure there's a way. I don't know how to do it. I usually just make an empty repo and then push to it. Okay.
If you have a repository that someone else is the master of and say your name is on it and it's online, can you somehow remove it?
No.
No.
The Git was specifically made so stuff doesn't go away. But that's why those API keys and login and passwords are so critical to not put there in the first place, because it is very hard to remove stuff like that afterwards. Another few artifacts that you might not want is your real name. So let's say you wrote code for a computer game, okay? So you have linked everything you have with your program with your gamer handle, your gamer ID, because you don't want people to know your real life stuff. Or let's say it might not even be a game type thing. It might be a security patch or something. You might not be an expert, but you're trying to help. But you want zero blowback at you. So what you do is you have an email address that is not your name, unlike one that you use to try to find a job. That is pretty much your name at whatever. It depends very much so on how you're going to do it. Because if I don't want something traced to me, I'm not going to use an email that says tower@google.com. I'm going to use something that's anonymous at google.com instead. But yeah, that's just one of the examples. Okay. Yeah.
Can you give like a more concrete example of like the git ignore, like how you set that up?
Yeah,
what you
sure.
would put there?
And is there a way to do so every time you git commit, it does a very basic git ignore?
So you can. We would talk more about how to set up an alias. So what we would do is actually write a series of commands that would do that. But okay, so let's go to the actual thing. So we're going to type vim.get ignore, and then we're going to do star dot.
You just let it insert now.
It's not letting me, which is there we go. All right. So we're going to use regular expressions. So we're going to say, I don't care how many letters. Star.swap. So any number of letters before .swap. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Star.swo, and then a.out. Okay, so these are pretty common artifacts that you would have. You can also do a .config. If you're working with people and they use Macs, there's another extension that props up pretty often. I can't off the top of my head remember what it is, but these are more you set it and forget it type of things. Before you go into it, you type everything in here, and then they will not be tracked.
Most importantly, config with.
Yes, I can't tell you enough about that. Also, you can tell it, I don't want a specific thing.
And so when you're talking about like the API keys and things like that, you can store those in your .config, and so by telling it don't track anything that
Exactly.
doesn't show up in your repository.
Exactly. So just an example, so Zulbot has its own .config file, and it has those the login information for it to connect with Rocket Chat. The .config is a part of that Git repo, so you can't there. It would be very hard to just say, oh yeah, this needs to now be part of it. And then there are a set of fields that are included with the file that are populated when it starts running. So it actually extracts the login entries that it needs to connect from this separate file that's just right next door.
Once we leave PSU, do we have to take all this with us, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how long the cat stuff will be, but as a student, you get your own. You can do a Git. You can do GitLab. Bitbucket's kind of got a thing going. You don't have a lack of options to go to. And you can always download it to your own laptop. So let's say you've got a server at home or some semblance of something. You can actually push that. So you can have a desktop version of version control that you can push and pull from. It is kind of on the tricky side, but if that's what you want to do, you can. If you feel like doing something really crazy, you have, if you've gone through the catacomb stuff, you have a server. It does things. Why don't you do things with it? that might be something to do, is to set up your own Git repository that's just for you. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
What about adding the status line in Bash?
What's
Status
The bash RC
So we can
thing.
see our directives.
Oh, yeah, we can definitely do that. Okay, so okay, so now what I want you to do is go ahead and look at your bash RC. If you do not have one, so the people that didn't have that pound sign at the beginning, you probably shouldn't have one. So we're going to go over kind of what the bash RC is doing. So this get stuff, that is where those symbols are coming from. The name, the branch name, and then that symbol at the end giving you a status. Okay? And then this one will do some autocomplete stuff. These are some pathing stuff that comes in handy. And then here's a bunch of aliases. Now, if you don't have a .bash, there is one that you can use. And I will write up here on the board. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go there now. So if you don't have your own, you can do this. You can also use this at you can also see there's some more stuff here. So in order to make that .bash RC active every time you log in, we're going to make a .bash profile. All that says is source .bash RC. So that way, when your profile is being loaded, it's going to look at this .bash underscore profile. It doesn't look at the .bash RC. It's going to look at the .bash profile and say, are you getting sourced somewhere? And then it will be. And then we'll go to the .vimrc. Okay? Yeah?
So you were saying if we don't have one, and then the way that we would find it if we do or don't is by trying to CD or trying to vim it, or?
So you can copy these.
Okay.
Go here and copy these three files, .bash underscore profile, .bash RC, and .vimrc. And then I'm about to go through these three files and show you what's going on. Okay? This isn't much about Git, but if this isn't in place, we definitely need to get you on board. Okay. So I'm going to do a cat command. All that just means is concatenate, and it's just going to put what's in there. Okay? So what this is doing is says, I want you to source from my home directory the file .bash RC. Anytime you make a change in the .bash RC, in order to make the change immediate, you type that, or you can log out and log back in. That's all this is doing. It's one line, very simple. Okay? Okay, Yeah, I'm gonna just. Okay. So this is kind of. I need to take that out. Okay. Now, you might have noticed me using letters in a weird way that you're not used to. That is because I have a lot more aliases set up. So one of the things that I do is when you're doing stuff, a function is a set of commands that you can use wherever you want. You can just call on it as many times as you want. You don't need to repeat it. The same thing with these aliases. So that get where we can just say, hey, I always want you to be colored, we can do the same thing with bash and say, I want you to replace the command ls with the command ls space hyphen hyphen color equals auto. So if you notice some of my files are looking in different colors, it's because that's always running. So I know at a glance what is running, what is a folder, some really quick stuff, okay? Another thing is I want you to get to work as soon as possible. Tell me if this is familiar, where you're sitting in front of the computer and you can't remember where your homework is. So you type ls, and then you type cd, folder, and then ls, cd, folder, and then possibly again. And then you need to vim all of those folders, or all of those files, and then you can start typing. Let me show you a different way. Instead, what if you got there and it opened it, and you got star cpp, star.h, and then -p. That's what I use for Vim. So I open all of the CPP files, all of the H files in that folder, and I like tabs. If you like vertical split, horizontal split, use those flags. I highly recommend using tabs because later on it'll definitely be payoff for you. Then what if you set up another alias called work? And you would actually say in that work alias work equals, and then parentheses, the directory you have to go to start working. So cd space 162, assignment 3, and then after that you put 2 ampersands and type vim-o. So what you do is you sit down at the computer, you type work, it automatically goes to that folder where you put everything, opens all of those Vim files, and gets you working within seconds. There is nothing more to think about. And then once assignment 4 rolls around, you go and change the folder to assignment 4. You have now saved yourself probably the better part of a minute every time you go to modify those files. And especially later on, time becomes very precious. Okay. Some other ones that are really fun to play around with is if I just want you to run, and I'm making, if you're switching back and forth from code to exploring the output, you can write a simple command. So instead of compiling everything, if you type this out every single time, please stop. Okay? So compile everything. I also do a -g flag to get it ready for GDB, and then run it. I don't have to think about typing all of that and running it. Now that does run with a caveat. Until you pass all of cardless classes, do not get too dependent on this and forget how to compile your code. Because come quiz or test day, this is not going to be available to you. So be very careful. But on the other hand, imagine how much time you would save if you just typed stuff and just made it happen. That's the power of these aliases. Okay? Same thing with Valgrind. I do not remember this entire thing. Never have, never will, never plan on it. However, I know these 4 letters. This is another thing. This is actually a function written in Bash. You can get to this anytime you want. just letting you know. But this is a function called CDL. And what it does is it will take the argument, so it'll CD the argument, and then ls. So what I've effectively done is how many times do you CD into a folder and then type ls. It's now one command. And then you can add arguments to it. Yeah. Okay, and then once you get into 333, these are some that I came up with. I've heard that Mark now actually gives you these. But imagine going through Carla's test and trying to remember these. I highly recommend you to think about creating an alias every time you think about typing something with a long time. Let me give you a perfect example of this, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, not exit. So, oh, I remember. So the really impressive one I have is actually on my school account, not my cat account. But these are some of the ones that I have to. When I log into the Zool database, I am supposed to type this out. I don't remember that. However, I do know that go and then where I want to go to is much easier to remember. You can set these up, and I want you to set these up. This is for the networking database. When I'm doing networking stuff, I am supposed to know how to type all of that in. I tell you I do not. But I've set it up so I don't have to. I can SSH into a school machine and make that happen. Yeah. Don't put your passwords in this. So notice how there are no passwords. You could put a password in here. Don't. I want you to be very tight-fisted with your passwords. If you want to do something like that, make a bash script that controls your SSH keys. Okay? It's not that difficult. If you want to sit down with somebody and work through it, that's fine. This is not the place for those, though. Okay? Okay. Does anybody have questions on what's going on here? Yeah.
I didn't try to understand 135.
Oh, so so what it's doing is I want you to run CD, and then if there's an argument there, and then run ls. So let me show you what's going on. Okay, so if I type ls, I'm looking at all of this stuff. So then I'm going to go ahead and CD into, let's say pictures. So if I type CD pictures, I don't know what's in there, so I'm going to just type ls. All right, so there's nothing in there. Now, So let's say cd zb, and then type ls. Okay, so now we've got a couple of things. So we've got the dependency, and then we've got Zulbot itself. Now, that takes a bit of time, not a whole lot. However, what if I just did cdl zb? So that changed my directory, and then did the ls. Another one that comes in handy is where they did an alias where 3 dots equaled going up 2 directories instead of just 1.
So it just looked for any files that have Z in me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. It went to the ZB directory and then ls. Because ZB was the argument for that.
Oh.
Okay. So this is exactly like typing cd and then the thing, and then running ls. So the 2 ampersands is what says do this and then do this. Okay. But yeah, all of that stuff is in that directory, and it is open to anyone. So you'll also see a bunch of other folders. Those I do quite a bit of classes on Fridays at 3. If you guys ever want to be in there, just let me know. I would highly recommend next week especially. So it's going over the making of makefiles, and we're going to cover how to automatically test your program. And so you think this saves time? Imagine testing your program and you say run, and what it does is it takes all the input that program is supposed to run with and automatically inject it when it needs to. I can't tell you how much time that saves. And when I watch people manually type this stuff for these Carla assignments, I just feel that I don't. Once you see how to do it automatically, you can't imagine watching somebody do that manually. It makes your heart go out to them, because how much time every single time they try to debug their program, and they're typing this over and over again. They shouldn't. And yet we don't teach people how to do that here.
You are correct.
And so we're going to cover that. This is actually the first time we're going to cover that for the classes.
What day and time is that?
It's going to be next Friday at 3 right here.
This is part of the ACM?
Yes, this is part of the ACM. So also, if you want to know the whole schedule, you can actually look through the window in the ACM room and look at all of those. Yeah.
Can you sign up for that?
You don't have to, just drop in. We're here for you. Yeah.
The ACM window is back there.
Yes. So you'll see a big schedule. You'll also see with the prior classes. Some of them are recorded, some of them are not though. So I highly recommend just showing it up. I started these classes specifically to cover the parts that we were not teaching. And so every stuff there is very specific. So like earlier today, we covered GDB. GDB is very crucial. So yeah. Okay. Did you guys look at the vimRC at all? Okay. Did you have any questions on that? Yeah.
So if the bash RC, if we take this and then make our own bash, do we just save it in our home directory?
Yes. So you can save it. You might not have the bash _ profiles, so you're just going to have to create that or copy it from the ACM folder, and then you'll be set up. And then go ahead and experiment with the different aliases. They come in really handy. They save a lot of time. Yeah.
Could you go over the vimRC thing?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so when you're opening Vim, there's a lot of different things you can do. So if you're, one of the things that I find incredibly important is the line numbers that are on the left side. So in order to make those appear and disappear, you can type this command called set number. So do a colon and then type set number, and it'll make the numbers appear on your Vim on the left side. Or you can not do that and put it in the .vimrc and it'll just type it as soon as you open it. Same thing with some of these other ones. So when I do a search, I want it highlighted while I'm typing. So a good example is, I haven't hit enter yet, but I know that I don't need to keep typing because nothing else is highlighted. That's what that highlighting during search is doing. The other one will actually jump to that section. So if this was more than one section, this would actually jump around. The wild menu is if I'm going to make a new tab. So tab E will open up another tab, and I'm going to tell it what file to do it. So I'm going to say .bash, and then notice how I can tab complete. Okay. Auto indent will make it so that it will try to figure out what you're doing and set your tabs to match what it thinks you're doing. These ones are optional. Later on, you're going to have languages that are sensitive to white space. Most notably are Python. That's where I've been having a lot of problems. So what you can do is show tabs as spaces, or spaces a dot, and then tabs as a greater than with a series of hyphens. So you know at a glance what that is. That's what these do. Also, if you want to remove white space, that is the command. So if you hit F5, it will remove trailing white space.
So by trailing, that means like if you type something, you have a couple extra spaces.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't matter in C, but that is actually really important for when you start getting into some Nick stuff. We've got a linter that will actually do it for us, but it's nice to not just worry about that. Okay. Later on for 333, you don't want tabs to be 4 spaces. So this will override that shift width by 2. It'll override that 4 spaces with 2 spaces. And it won't make it a tab, it will actually make it spaces. Depending on the language you're with, that can be very helpful. Okay. Okay.
Is that smart indent supposed to be like?
Yeah, I hit the buttons wrong, so it jumped it to the end of it. I'm just going to quit out of it without saving it. It won't matter. Okay. If you Google Vim commands, or not commands, but options, you will come up with more things, such as doing a background. So you can actually set the color, Elf Lord, Shiny, Desert. These are really kind of popular things. But yeah, that's what's happening here, is you're tweaking your Vim environment to be friendlier to you. Yeah. So that's just holding down Control and then plus. Oh, Control Shift, and then Control minus makes it smaller. It's that easy.
And it works in other,
It does.
yeah, it's not just.
Also, in Windows, a lot of Windows environment, you press and hold Control and then use the scroll wheel. That makes it bigger and smaller.
So then the other nice thing that keeps pounding into my mind is that there are a lot of things like HTOP and stuff that
Yes.
use Vim controls.
Yes.
If you want to search for something in HTOP, it's just like searching in Vim.
Yeah.
More or less, I think, does.
You can do. Yeah. Yeah.
Searching, probably.
It's probably not more, but less.
Less,
Yeah.
It's
Less.
really just
Less actually came out quite a bit after more was done.
Yes, because less didn't exist.
Because less didn't exist. Yep.
Yeah, less is more.
Less is more. Yes.
So when we're taking the proficiency demos, I know
Mhm.
we can't use these in like in VRMC, but can we do set in our demo?
Oh yeah,
We can
absolutely.
change the settings
Yeah.
with set.
So to know exactly what you're getting in the proficiency demo, log into Quizzer. So that will automatically disable the arrow keys. So oops. So I have a bit more than what is, and then I kind of have modified stuff. But yeah, you'll see some of this stuff. This is actually what I wanted to show you, the no remat Q. So if you ever hit Q, you get in a weird stuck state that causes problems. So what it's doing is it's actually recording your actions in order to be set back to you in a specific way. I have never found it helpful, and I have actually had it a problem many times. You add these two lines to it to make sure that never happens. And then you won't waste time trying to get out of that weird state.
I want to say creating macros is actually super helpful if you're doing anything repetitive.
Yeah, it is. However, I have not been in a situation where it has been helpful. I just do that. Yeah.
That's the thing about Vim is that everybody has it the way they like.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody uses differently.
Exactly.
They're all great.
What do you mean, what is it?
So basically, it records everything you do, and then it will allow you just to repeat it. If you hit, so let's say you hit QQ, it's going to start recording everything and put it into your queue. When you hit at Q, and then we'll replay that from where your cursor is. So if you need to remove a specific set of text all the way down, you can like remove it from that line, move down, you record that, and then you just like keep repeating that over and over, and it does it for
Another
you.
thing, what I've used it for is that I always put a specific header at the beginning of a file, and I have another one that I do at the beginning of a method or a function, so that I'm scanning down, because I've got a lot of trouble, I'm scaling down. It's like, there's the beginning of a function, there's the beginning of a function, and so I have aliases, I have the macros for them, and I just do like @h or @f, and it will slam that text in there, and it has my name in it, and it leaves my cursor right at the word where I replace it with the file or function name. So I just do add H, and there it is, and it always looks the same,
Mhm.
and so that's how I use it.
Just make sure you're super careful in that, because you will not have that functionality for the proficiency demo. So just be careful. But this is the one specifically that I wanted to show you this. So if a virtual machine that I had to do homework on died, this is what you had to type to fix it. That is not something I would feel like fixing and remembering and looking up. However, I can remember this. And if you just type, anytime you want to see what's in your aliases, instead of just typing your vim, your dot bash rc and vimming it, you can just type alias and it will give you a list of aliases that you have set. So that way, if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what is the command for valgrind? You have your handy little thing. You can just type alias, look for valgrind, and then read them off that whole thing and say, hey, let me tell you about aliases.
So is this an old work, or are you still doing work inside?
Oh, that's an old one. It's because there isn't really reason to get rid of them. Eventually, when I go to a next class and I do vim, this is another reason why you would use aliases, is when I go to my next class and we do VMs, I know what this command is supposed to do. I just replace it with the current text. So when I went from one class to the other, I replaced this part with whatever he named his vim. I didn't have to learn a whole new set of commands. All I did is kept my old command and remapped it to whatever action needed to be done. So that's another great way to use aliases, is you don't have to learn anything new. You know what needs to be done, so you write your alias to get that done.